Arizona Territory, 1876. Gunshots shattered the silence across the windswept plateau. A cloud of dust billowed behind a lone rider. A woman, her dark hair streaming behind her, her buckskin dress torn at the shoulder. 6 mounted men followed in deadly pursuit, gaining ground with each passing moment. James Blackwood, a towering figure in a tailored black coat despite the desert heat, raised his hand to halt his men. His silver-handled Remington gleamed in the harsh sunlight. "I want the half-breed alive," Blackwood's voice cut through the air like a bullwhip. "That land and everything beneath it belongs to me. Shoot the horse, not the woman." The lead gunman raised his Winchester 73, the scope catching the sun. The crack of the rifle echoed across the canyon. The woman's horse stumbled, then collapsed, sending her tumbling across the rocky ground. Jack Harmon sat motionless atop his dun stallion on a distant ridge, studying the unfolding scene through his brass telescope. At 45, time had hardened rather than weakened him. His face, weathered by sun and wind, betrayed nothing as he observed the hunters close in on their prey. 20 years as a Union cavalry scout during the war had taught him patience. 3 years alone in these territories had taught him survival. The Apache tracking skills he'd mastered had kept him alive when others perished. He collapsed the telescope with a practiced movement and reached for the Sharp's Big 50 rifle secured to his saddle. The weapon was an extension of himself, 50 inches of precision-crafted steel and walnut. He'd used it to return 3 stolen horses to the Apache camp just yesterday. A simple gesture of frontier fairness, nothing more. Jack dismounted silently, his movements economical. He calculated distance, wind in bullet drop as naturally as breathing. 400 yards, westerly wind, about 7 miles per hour. He made the necessary adjustments to his rear sight, his calloused fingers moving with surgical precision. The first shot dropped a gunman from his saddle without ceremony. The second found another before the echoes of the first had faded. The remaining 4 scattered, diving for cover behind rocks and scrub, their attention no longer on the fallen woman, but on the invisible threat from the ridge. Jack moved laterally along the ridgeline, a shadow among shadows. 15 minutes later, he approached the woman from her blind side. Her hands clutched a small knife, ready to fight or die. Her dark eyes, fierce despite her predicament, locked onto him. "I'm not with them," Jack said simply, his voice rough from disuse. "Then who are you with?" The question came in perfect English, her accent suggesting education beyond the territories. "Nobody," he offered his canteen. "Name's Jack Harmon." She hesitated, then accepted. "Elena Redhawk." "Those men will regroup soon. We need to move." He nodded toward his horse. No further explanation necessary. Elena studied him, weighing her limited options. "Why help me? You don't know me." Jack's storm gray eyes revealed nothing. "Don't know them either." Gray Wolf, chief of the local Apache band, stood impassively as Jack and Elena rode into camp. Warriors surrounded them, rifles and bows at the ready. Jack recognized the same men who had accepted the return horses from him the previous day. "You return quickly, Ghost Eyes," Gray Wolf said in halting English. "Now you bring back what is not yours." Jack remained in the saddle, one hand resting casually near his Colt Peacemaker. "She's not property. Found her being hunted by white men, Blackwood's men." A ripple of murmurs spread through the gathered Apache. Gray Wolf's expression darkened. "The woman brings death," he said. "We took her from Blackwood's camp 3 nights ago. Thought to trade her back for peace." His gaze fixed on Elena. "She is cursed. Blackwood burns villages for her." Elena straightened in the saddle. "I never asked to be taken by anyone." Jack's eyes narrowed. "You were going to trade her? Like the horses?" "Horses valuable." Gray Wolf shrugged. "She, dangerous." As they departed the Apache camp, an elderly medicine man approached. His face, deeply lined by decades under the harsh sun, bore the wisdom of countless seasons. He gripped Jack's stirrup with surprising strength. "She knows the mountain that bleeds silver," he whispered. "Blackwood knows this. The silver calls to men like demons call to sinners." His dark eyes shifted to Elena. Her father found it, died for it. Now she carries his curse. Jack felt the weight of the old man's words settle across his shoulders. This wasn't just about rescuing a woman anymore. Silver meant mining operations. Mining meant corporate interests. Corporate interests meant bought politicians, hired guns, and land grabs. They made camp that night in a defensible ravine. Jack built a small fire, carefully shielded to minimize visibility. Elena watched him work, her movements betraying formal education rather than frontier upbringing. "You can leave me at the next trading post," she said finally. "They're hunting me, not you. Perhaps they'll spare you if—" Jack checked the chambers of his Colt, the firelight dancing across its polished surface. "I've seen too many good people abandoned in the name of convenience." He snapped the cylinder closed with a practiced flick, not adding to that count. Elena's eyes reflected the flickering flames. "You don't even know what you're fighting for." "Doesn't matter." Jack's voice carried the finality of a man who had made similar decisions before. "I know what I'm fighting against." Dawn painted the landscape in amber hues as they approached Jack's cabin. Built into the side of a rocky bluff, the structure seemed to grow from the earth itself. Its positioning was no accident. The location offered clear sight lines in three directions, with the impassable rock face protecting the fourth. A small corral stood nearby, fed by a spring that emerged from the rock. "Apache would call this good medicine," Elena observed. "Defensible, hidden, with water." Jack merely nodded as he dismounted. He'd selected this location for precisely those reasons. 3 years of solitude had taught him the value of strategic positioning. Inside, the cabin was spare but meticulously organized. A stone fireplace dominated one wall. Rifles and pistols hung on pegs, ammunition stored in metal boxes beneath. Dried meat hung from rafters. Every item had a purpose. Nothing was wasted. "You built for war," Elena said, studying the narrow windows positioned for defensive fire. "Built for survival." Jack hung his hat on a peg. "Sometimes they're the same thing." As daylight faded, Elena finally shared her story. Her father had been a geologist working for the Territorial Survey. He'd discovered a massive silver deposit while mapping the region. Instead of reporting it, he'd married an Apache woman, Elena's mother, and settled on the land. "My father taught me everything about the deposit," Elena explained. "The depth, the quality, the access points. He said knowledge was the only inheritance worth having." "Blackwood found out?" Elena's face hardened. "3 years ago. Came with 30 men. Killed my parents. Burned our home." Her fingers traced a scar along her forearm. "I escaped with nothing but my father's maps. Been running ever since." Jack stared into the fire. "These maps, you still have them?" "Better." Elena tapped her temple. "I memorized them, then destroyed them. The entire deposit is here. That's what Blackwood wants. And the Apache? They found me collapsed near their hunting grounds last month. Took me in until they realized who was hunting me. Then decided I was more valuable as a bargaining chip." Jack poured 2 cups of coffee, the aroma filling the cabin. "Where exactly is the silver deposit?" Elena met his gaze directly. "We're sitting on it. This entire bluff is laced with one of the richest silver veins in the territory. My father's surveys estimated its value at over $5 million. Jack's cup froze halfway to his lips. The revelation crystallized countless strange occurrences over the past year. Unknown riders observing his property, unexplained offers to purchase his claim, Territorial officials suddenly interested in reassessing his boundaries. "Now you understand," Elena said quietly. "You didn't rescue a woman, Mr. Harmon. You invited a war to your doorstep." Before Jack could respond, a distinctive bird call pierced the night, except it wasn't a bird. Jack extinguished the lantern in one swift motion, drawing his Colt simultaneously. "Apache," Elena whispered. Jack moved to the window, staying in shadow. "No, they wouldn't signal." The attack came without further warning. 5 arrows thudded into the cabin's outer wall in quick succession. Jack recognized the pattern. Standard Apache night assault tactics. Create confusion, draw defenders' attention, then strike from the opposite direction. "They're testing our response," Jack whispered. "Stay low." The cabin's design proved its worth. Jack moved between defensive positions with practiced efficiency, firing only when certain of his target. 3 attackers fell within the first minutes. The others retreated to regroup. Elena proved herself no helpless victim. She'd recovered a bow from her fallen attackers and positioned herself at a rear window, her aim steady and precise. "You've used that before," Jack observed during a lull. "My mother taught me. Said a woman who can't defend herself is already dead in these territories." The night passed in tense vigilance. By dawn, the attackers had vanished, leaving 5 bodies scattered around the cabin perimeter. Jack examined their weapons and markings. "Mixed band," he concluded. "Some Apache, some Mexican bandits. Hired guns." He extracted a folded paper from one man's pocket, a crude map of Jack's cabin with notes in English. "Someone's coordinating them." "Blackwood," Elena confirmed grimly. Jack studied the horizon. "We need supplies, ammunition. Can't survive a siege otherwise." "Nearest trading post?" "Copper Creek, day's ride west." Jack checked his ammunition pouches. "Too risky for both of us to go." "So I stay here?" Elena's tone made clear her opinion of this plan. "No." Jack began gathering essentials. "Too dangerous separated. We ride together fast and quiet. Apache trails, not the main road." The desert heat shimmered across the landscape as a dust devil twisted violently across their path. Jack raised a hand, halting their progress. His eyes narrowed at the distant ridge. Dust, moving against the wind. He handed Elena his telescope. "Northwest ridge. Count the riders." Elena studied the horizon. 7. No, 8 men. Moving parallel to us. "Scouts!" Jack adjusted their course slightly. "They're tracking, not chasing. Don't know our exact position." They navigated through a series of narrow canyons, Jack's knowledge of the terrain allowing them to avoid the main trails. He pointed out survival essentials as they rode, which cacti held drinkable water, how to identify Apache trail markers, the difference between rattlesnake and rabbit tracks. "War taught you this?" Elena asked during a brief rest. "War taught me killing." Jack handed her a strip of dried venison. "This land taught me living." A sudden windstorm forced them to shelter in a narrow cave. As sand and debris scoured the landscape outside, Jack built a small, smokeless fire using dried dung. "Desert storm's a blessing," he explained. "Erases tracks, disrupts pursuit." Elena watched him work. "You've been alone a long time." It wasn't a question, but Jack answered anyway. "After what I saw in the war, towns felt too crowded, too many people wanting too many things." He stared into the tiny flames. "Out here, everything's honest. Sun will burn you, cold will freeze you, but neither one lies about its intentions." The storm intensified, howling through the canyon like a living thing. Between gusts, Jack detected an unnatural sound, a human groan. Drawing his Colt, he moved toward the cave entrance. A figure stumbled through the swirling sand, a tall black man, blood soaking his left sleeve. He collapsed just inside the cave entrance. Jack kept his weapon trained on the stranger while Elena checked his wound. Rifle shot, clean through the shoulder. The man's eyes fluttered open. "You'd be Harmon," he managed. "Cabin on Silver Bluff." Jack's finger tightened on the trigger. "Who's asking?" "Name's Matthew Johnson." He grimaced as Elena probed his wound. "Blackwood hired me to track you. Paid better than most." "You're doing a poor job of it," Jack observed coldly. Matthew attempted a pained smile. "Intended to, once I learned what he really wanted." He reached slowly into his coat, withdrawing a folded document. "Land deed, your property. Blackwood's having it transferred to his mining company tomorrow. Judge is in his pocket." Jack examined the document. Official territorial seal, legitimate signatures. "Why tell me this?" Jack demanded. "Why turn on your employer?" Matthew's face darkened. "Worked for men like Blackwood before. During the war. After. Man promises money but pays in blood, usually someone else's." He winced as Elena began cleaning his wound. "Besides, I saw what his men did to her parents' homestead. Some lines even a bounty hunter won't cross." The storm cleared by nightfall. Jack stood outside the cave studying the star-filled sky. Matthew's revelation had confirmed his suspicions, but accelerated the timeline. Blackwood wasn't just sending hired guns. He was weaponizing the law itself. Elena joined him, her presence quiet but steady. "You believe him?" "Documents real." Jack continued scanning the horizon. "Question is whether we can use the information." "We could leave," Elena suggested. "I know territories further south. Mexico." "Perhaps." Jack turned to face her. "You'd abandon your parents' land? Your inheritance?" "I'd choose life over silver." Her eyes reflected the starlight. "Wouldn't you?" Jack was silent for a long moment. "I've run before, after the war. Kept moving for years." His gaze drifted to his distant cabin on the bluff. "When I found that piece of land, something changed. First time I felt I belonged somewhere." "Land's just dirt and rock, Jack." "No." His voice hardened. "Land's the only thing that outlasts men. Only thing worth fighting for." By morning, Matthew was strong enough to ride. The unlikely trio traveled cross-country, avoiding established trails, Jack setting a punishing pace. They reached Copper Creek by mid-afternoon, a cluster of wooden buildings surrounded by mines and claims. Jack positioned them on a ridge overlooking the settlement. Too many unfamiliar horses. Blackwood's men could be anywhere. Matthew studied the town through Jack's telescope. That's Blackwood's personal coach outside the assay office, black with silver trim. "How many men travel with him?" Jack asked. "Usually 6, his personal guard." Matthew handed back the telescope. "But he can buy more locally. Miners, drifters." Jack formulated his plan quickly. "I need ammunition, information." He checked his Colt. "Elena stays here with you, Matthew. I'll move faster alone." "And if you don't return?" Elena asked. Jack mounted his horse. "Then ride north, Apache Pass. Ask for Grey Wolf. Tell him Jack Harmon sent you." He handed her his Sharps rifle. "And take this. It's zeroed for 400 yards. Copper Creek hummed with activity as Jack rode in, his duster concealing his weapons. He tied his horse outside the general store, maintaining awareness of every movement around him. The shopkeeper barely looked up as he entered. Jack purchased ammunition, coffee, and hardtack with minimal conversation. As he waited for his supplies, he overheard miners discussing Blackwood's latest acquisition, a silver claim worth more than the whole damn territory. Outside the store, Jack spotted 3 men watching him, the distinctive bulges under their coats revealing concealed weapons. Blackwood's men, no doubt. He loaded his purchases onto his horse, pretending not to notice their attention. Instead of leaving town, Jack headed for the saloon. If information was flowing, it would be there. He ordered whiskey and found a corner table with his back to the wall, listening more than drinking. The saloon doors swung open. James Blackwood entered, flanked by two gunmen. The room fell silent. Blackwood stood over 6 feet tall, his silver hair and beard impeccably groomed, his black suit unmarred by travel dust. He scanned the room with pale blue eyes that seemed to catalog every detail for future reference. Those cold eyes found Jack. Recognition flickered across Blackwood's face. "Mr. Harmon," he called across the silent room, "I believe you have something that belongs to me." Jack sipped his whiskey. "Don't believe I do." Blackwood approached, stopping at a respectful distance. "A misunderstanding, perhaps. I'm referring to a young woman, half Apache, daughter of a surveyor." His tone remained conversational. "She stole something valuable from me. Lady's business is her own." Blackwood's smile never reached his eyes. "I'm authorized by territorial authorities to recover stolen property and apprehend the thief." He withdrew a document. "Perhaps you'd like to examine my credentials." Jack didn't look at the paper. "Perhaps you'd like to examine my disinterest." The saloon remained deathly quiet. Blackwood's guards tensed, hands hovering near weapons. "I'm also prepared to be reasonable," Blackwood continued. "Your land claim. I'll pay $5,000, 5 times its assessed value." "Not for sale." "10,000 then." When Jack remained silent, Blackwood's facade cracked slightly. "You have no idea what you're sitting on, do you?" Jack met Blackwood's gaze directly. "I know exactly what I'm sitting on. My land." "Your stubbornness will cost lives," Blackwood warned, his voice hardening. "Including your own." "Wouldn't be the first time." Jack finished his whiskey. "Won't be the last." As Jack left the saloon, he counted at least 5 men following at a distance. His horse was where he left it, though someone had searched his saddlebags. He mounted and rode out of town at an unhurried pace. A mile outside Copper Creek, Jack veered suddenly off the trail, spurring his horse up a steep embankment. Gunshots erupted behind him as his pursuers abandoned subtlety. He led them on a winding chase through broken country, using terrain to his advantage, slowly separating the riders. One by one, he eliminated his pursuers. A clean shot from behind a boulder, a sudden ambush around a blind corner. By sunset, he'd lost them all. Elena and Matthew had relocated to a different vantage point, as Jack had instructed. Elena lowered the Sharp's rifle as Jack approached, relief evident in her expression. "Blackwood's in town," Jack reported without preamble. "Knows we're together. Has papers authorizing him to apprehend you for theft." "Theft?" Elena's expression hardened. "My father's maps belong to him, not Blackwood." "Law doesn't care about justice," Matthew interjected. "Only property." Jack began dividing the supplies. "Blackwood offered 10,000 for my land." "That's nothing compared to what it's worth," Elena said. "Wasn't selling anyway." Jack checked his Colt methodically. "But his presence changes things. He's bringing this to a head." "So we run," Matthew suggested. Jack shook his head. "We return to the cabin. Prepare. Make our stand there." "Against Blackwood and all his men?" Elena questioned. "That's suicide." "No." Jack's eyes reflected the setting sun. "That's home field advantage." They rode through the night, using the stars for navigation. Jack led them through ravines and washes invisible to untrained eyes. By dawn, they approached his cabin from the rear, using the bluff for cover. Jack surveyed the area carefully before approaching. No signs of disturbance. They stabled the horses and entered the cabin, exhausted but alert. "Sleep in shifts," Jack ordered. 2 hours each. I'll take first watch." While Elena and Matthew rested, Jack methodically prepared the cabin's defenses. He positioned ammunition caches at strategic points, prepared water barrels, set tripwires across likely approach routes, calculated fields of fire, and identified potential enemy cover. When Matthew took his watch, Jack pulled Elena aside. "Need to show you something." He led her to a corner of the cabin where he removed floorboards to reveal a small tunnel. Emergency escape leads to a cave 50 yards north. If things go wrong, you take this out. Elena studied the tunnel, then Jack. You built this your first day here, didn't you? Jack replaced the floorboards. Built it before I built the roof. By mid-afternoon, they spotted the first scout, a lone rider observing the cabin from a distant ridge. An hour later, two more appeared on opposite approaches. They're establishing a perimeter, Matthew observed. Classic military encirclement. Jack nodded. Blackwood's coordinating them. Question is when they'll move. Tonight, Matthew predicted. New moon, dark enough for an approach. Jack distributed weapons, his spare Colt to Elena, a Winchester repeater to Matthew. We hold as long as possible. If we're overrun, retreat to the tunnel. No heroics. His eyes lingered on Elena. The silver's not worth dying for. Elena checked her weapon with practiced hands. It's not about the silver anymore. Hasn't been since they killed my parents. Jack understood. He'd felt the same during the war. The moment when fighting transformed from duty to personal necessity. As darkness fell, they extinguished all lights in the cabin. Jack positioned himself at the front window, Matthew at the rear, Elena covering the side approach. The night stretched, silent and tense. The attack began with fire arrows arcing toward the cabin roof. Jack had anticipated this. He'd soaked the wooden shingles the previous day. The arrows stuck but failed to ignite the structure. Gunfire erupted from multiple positions. Bullets thudded into the cabin walls. Jack returned fire methodically, targeting muzzle flashes, conserving ammunition. Matthew did the same from his position. Elena proved herself a capable defender, her shots carefully placed. When attackers rushed the sidewall, she dropped two before they reached cover. The first wave subsided. Jack counted at least 15 attackers from the pattern of fire. They're probing, he whispered, testing our positions. The second wave came with more coordination, covering fire from multiple angles while several men attempted to reach the cabin with torches. Jack shifted position, taking precise shots that dropped the torch bearers before they closed half the distance. A bullet splintered the window frame inches from Jack's head. He rolled aside, returning fire. Elena cried out. A bullet had grazed her arm. Matthew moved to assist her while maintaining his firing position. Wound superficial, Elena reported, wrapping a cloth around her arm. I can still shoot. The night progressed in cycles of intense fighting and watchful silence. By dawn, the attackers had withdrawn to defensive positions, leaving 7 bodies scattered around the cabin. Inside, their ammunition was dangerously low. Matthew peered through a rifle port. They're regrouping. I count at least 12 still out there. Jack was about to respond when a familiar sound caught his attention. A bird call that wasn't a bird. He moved to the window, scanning the eastern ridge. Apache, he confirmed, spotting traditional markings on distant riders. At least 10 warriors. Grey Wolf's band. They're joining Blackwood? Elena asked in disbelief. Don't think so, Jack continued observing. They're positioning against his men, not us. The Apache attacked without warning, descending on Blackwood's forces with precision and fury. Caught between two enemies, Blackwood's men broke formation, some fleeing, others fighting desperately from poor positions. Through his telescope, Jack spotted Blackwood himself, directing his remaining men from behind a rock outcropping. Blackwood's exposed, east side, large boulder, black coat. Matthew sighted his rifle. 400 yards, difficult shot. I'll take it, Elena said, reaching for the Sharp's rifle. Her hands were steady as she adjusted the sights. She drew a deep breath, held it, and squeezed the trigger. The powerful rifle bucked against her shoulder. Through his telescope, Jack saw Blackwood clutch his side and fall behind cover. Hit, not killed, Jack reported. His men are retreating. As Blackwood's forces scattered, Grey Wolf and his warriors surrounded the cabin. Jack stepped onto the porch, rifle lowered, but ready. Grey Wolf approached alone, his face unreadable. Ghost Eyes fights well, the chief acknowledged, but cannot fight all enemies alone. Jack studied the Apache leader. Why help us? Blackwood burns our hunting grounds, poisons our water. Grey Wolf gestured toward the distant silver mine. Earth bleeds when he touches it. His gaze shifted to Elena. Woman's father respected the land, made fair trades. Blackwood knows only taking. Elena joined Jack on the porch. My father's maps. They show how to mine without destroying the water sources. Grey Wolf nodded. This is why we come. Not for silver, for water. An understanding formed between them. Jack saw the path forward, not just survival, but a future. The Apache needed protection from territorial expansion. Elena needed justice for her parents. The land needed responsible stewardship. And Jack needed purpose beyond mere existence. We propose an alliance, Jack said formally. Your warriors protect the boundaries. Elena directs the mining, clean, respectful. I handle the white man's law and markets. And Blackwood? Grey Wolf questioned. Wounded, not defeated, Jack acknowledged. He'll return with the law on his side. Then we must have stronger law, Elena said. My father's survey maps give us legal claim under the Mining Act. With Apache witnesses to his original discovery, territorial courts must recognize our prior rights. Grey Wolf considered this, then extended his hand. A white man's gesture offered with Apache dignity. Alliance accepted. 1 year later, the cabin had transformed. Additional structures surrounded it. An assay office, trading post, and small refinery. Apache families had established a permanent camp nearby, serving as both workforce and protection. A small silver operation functioned under Elena's direction, employing traditional mining techniques that preserved water sources. Jack stood on the porch, watching workers return from the day's shift. Matthew, now fully recovered, managed the trading post, his natural business acumen turning it into a regional success. Elena emerged from the assay office, account ledgers in hand. First quarterly shipment exceeded expectations. The Eastern investors are pleased. Jack nodded. Blackwood had survived his wound, but found his political connections insufficient against their legitimate claim, especially when backed by Apache testimonies and original survey documents Elena had recovered from a hidden cache. Rumor says Blackwood's raising capital in San Francisco, Jack noted, still hasn't abandoned his plans. Let him come. Elena's hand rested briefly on Jack's arm. We're prepared now. A rider approached from the main road, a stranger, hand casually near his sidearm. Jack's posture shifted subtly. Years of survival instincts still sharp despite months of relative peace. Elena noticed the change. Another mining representative? We'll see. Jack's hand hovered near his ever-present Colt. As the stranger dismounted, Jack descended the porch steps to meet him. This wasn't just his fight anymore. The silver beneath them had forged something stronger than wealth. Community, purpose, a future worth protecting. Welcome to Silver Bluff Station, Jack called to the newcomer. His voice carried the authority of a man who had found his place in the world, not as a solitary survivor, but as a guardian of something larger than himself. On the frontier, justice wasn't given. It was built, defended, and maintained through vigilance and sacrifice. Jack Harmon had learned that lesson in blood and bone. Now he lived it every day on this silver-rich land that had become more than property. It had become home.